Ksiazek. I'm a Ph.D. candidate in the doctoral program in plant biology and conservation. That's a joint program between Northwestern University and the Chicago Botanic Garden. And I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about some of the research that I'm doing that ISEN was generous enough to help with funding. So I'm really glad that I get to go after you guys have already heard about the importance of biodiversity conservation and pollinator habitat, because this is something that inspired my work as well. So I grew up in Chicago, and I knew as soon as I graduated undergrad that I wanted to learn more about nature and more about biodiversity. So where did I go? Out to Colorado. I thought everything out there is beautiful, you have these mountain ranges, that's where the nature is, that's where conservation is happening. And I was out there and it is beautiful and wonderful, but I missed these plants and these animals that I was very familiar with from my home here in Chicago. And then I learned about green roofs. Green roofs were being built in Chicago in the early 2000s, mostly as a way of retaining stormwater. And I thought, well, there are these wonderful structures that are in cities, which I loved, with these wonderful plant species and animal species, which I also love. And what a great way to kind of merge everything together. So when I saw this graduate program with Northwestern and the Botanic Garden right in Chicagoland area, I thought, this is perfect. This is what I'm going to do. So I started studying green roofs, and I'm really excited about them because they are ways of bringing nature back into the city. They're ways of walking the walk, or walking the talk, I guess, when we say we want to conserve native species. There's no reason to have to go out to Colorado to do it. We can do it right here. And so that's what my research focuses on. I really believe that biodiversity is the key to resiliency. For example, on green roofs, oftentimes they're not planted with a wide variety of species. Maybe they're planted with only a few species from the same genus because they're succulent and they're hardy. But if something happens to these species, they could all die out. All the individuals could die on a green roof, and you would lose all of the good environmental properties of stormwater mitigation, urban heat island mitigation. And so those properties would be lost if we use a very narrow species palette. So I'm investigating whether or not we can use native species and a wide variety of native species to help not only improve the performance of green roofs, but also to help conserve biodiversity. And the research I'm doing that's being funded by ISEN has to do with genetic diversity. So genetic diversity also increases the resiliency of populations. We know this from common examples like the Irish potato famine and Dutch elm disease. We know that when we only use species that are really similar or have the same genes, it can be very detrimental. And this is true also on green roofs. When one species is used that's clonally propagated, so it's something that's very inbred and all the individuals have similar genes, then if a disease comes by or a pest comes by, it could wipe out the entire thing. And so I'm looking to see if there are ways of increasing genetic diversity on green roofs and thereby increasing the resiliency of those populations that live there. So the key to gene movement are pollinators, and luckily there are a lot of pollinators on green roofs. Some of my master's work in the graduate program saw that there were pollinators. They do pollinate native plants, and the native plants make seeds, but there aren't quite as many native pollinators, and there's not quite a wide a variety or diversity of native pollinators as you might expect at the ground level. So to do some investigating, I'm doing a parentage study. I'm using a native penstemon species right here that grows locally in the region and has been known to do well on green roofs and is pollinated by a variety of pollinators, including some of our native pollinators. And I'm doing, what I've done is set out some of these plants on 10 different green roofs that are in a somewhat isolated area of the north side of Chicago in Rogers Park. And I'll be measuring the movement of pollen, thereby measuring the movement of genes throughout some of these isolated habitats. And so not only will this help us learn about the diversity and the resiliency of green roof populations, but I believe that this research can also help us understand more about what's going on with the resiliency and gene movement in urban populations in general. So I think that what's going on the roof, it could also be applied most likely to what's going on the ground. And I do thank ISEN for supporting me in this and believing in this work. And I don't have too many results just yet because I just started the research this summer. But I look forward to speaking at a future summit possibly and reporting on what I found. Thank you.